Hey there! Welcome back to You're Listening to Radio Revel, Season 3, 4 Decades. This is update episode number 4, and it's called, Is Artificial Intelligence Intelligent? Now before you listen, if you're one of those people who like videos more than podcasts, well, you can listen to this story while watching me build a shoe shelf for the under-the-window table in my kitchen. The project began as a bench with shoe storage below and hooks on the back to hang our jackets, but it was reduced to the shoe shelf mainly because I don't have all the tools I need to clean up the pallet wood I'm using for the project, and I'm not all that good at making boards square yet. I'm still working on that talent. Anyway, you can watch me do one of those things I used as an excuse to take a break from the stories while listening to this episode, or you can just listen here. Or, if you're already on YouTube, well, YouTube. So, this entire artificial intelligence thing has been an increasingly talked about advancement in our collective virtual world. I remember listening to a TEDx talk a couple of years back, the guy telling us just how dangerous AI would become for us mere thinking humans in a not-too-distant future, and it seems that that future is here now. Or at least the biggest advance has taken place in very recent history, let's say with the public access to ChatGPT in late November 2022. Now, I happen to earn my bread in the virtual world. Have been doing so full-time for about 3 years, though I earned my first pennies per word cash as far back as 2008, 2009. My current work involves writing guest blog posts for a language learning platform explaining English grammar. I'd been writing those posts off and on my own for years, but this was an opportunity to write those posts for money. I began this current job in February of 2022. On the 30th of November 2022 was the launch of ChatGPT. I opened the ChatGPT. I gave the thing some instructions concerning a grammar post I was then currently writing. I just wanted to see just how well the bot could do my job. The results were pretty good, though I found a number of affirmations and examples that were flat out wrong. My first impression was that ChatGPT was not a tool I would be using for a number of reasons. First of all, I am an experienced writer. I don't need a computer program to write for me. Secondly, the language produced is not at all my style, not my voice, a bit too formal for my liking. Thirdly, the somewhat official term for mistakes made by the chatbot, hallucinations, well, some hallucinations were boldly obvious, but at times hallucinations were subtle enough that were I not totally knowledgeable about the theme, they would have slipped by me altogether. Fourthly, within days of its launch, the servers at OpenAI were so overloaded with people trying out this new thing that it either didn't let me use it at all, try again later, or would stop responding halfway through an assignment. Finally, there was an inherent SEO structure to the material, which is an advantage for those writing to get front-page hits on Google, but which has become a plague of standardization of internet content that I personally find boring, repetitive, and worrisome. For those who don't know, a very simplified explanation of SEO would be using popular keywords taken from user searches and implementing them into specific structures and HTML-coded headers that the Google search engine can easily recognize and evaluate. Also includes certain types of sentence structure as well as compositional norms, such as asking questions in headers and answering those questions immediately in the following text. Again, that's really simplifying a complex algorithm, but it's enough for my discussion here. When I took the grammar post job, I asked about SEO. I was told that the posts were meant to make clear, easy-to-understand explanations of English grammar. I was even assured that they were not simply another traffic-building tool for the platform, though some email harvesting would be involved. That is, I would promise some extra material, an exercise, or a useful chart, and the reader would leave his or her email in order to get that material, as well as becoming part of a marketing email list. Even the onboarding training material leaned towards the writers having a certain freedom, sometimes a mandate, to be original, creative in their presentation. We were encouraged to write with friendly I, you language, add images and GIFs. That original training material did not even mention SEO, so I just began writing up those posts in the same friendly, engaging way I taught that material in my classes. Over the evolution of the project, though, I found my editor leaning more and more into following the structure and language of extant grammar explanations that showed up in first-page hit list on Google when certain search terms were entered. It was becoming obvious that originality was taking a back seat to Google search terms. I asked who the intended audience for the posts was without getting a very clear answer. That could be English learners, ESL students, teachers, administrators, whoever. It actually turned out that the audience was Google. Which brings me back to artificial intelligence. I've just read today that some clever companies are taking advantage of the collective fear factor built into AI in order to sell AI identification services. That is, these services look at content, be it images, sound, or the written word, and try to identify that product as either human or AI. 3 big service providers were mentioned in the article, one looking at images and video, and the other 2 looking at text. One data point that stood out for me was that OpenAI, the group that launched ChatGPT, was only able to flag 26% of AI-generated text, and misflagged 9% human text as AI. Now that 9% are people like me, writing content for websites for a living, whose livelihood is among many jobs that are in a redundancy crosshairs now because of AI. On the other hand, could it not be that 9% misflagged human writing was misflagged precisely because we human writers are being required to write to the audience of one, the Google algorithm? Food for thought. Another report focused on the use of AI on several platforms where obviously fake or misleading information was being produced in order to get users to click on an advertisement that might offer some kind of remedy for whatever problem was being explained. Disinformation produced by AI, though, can't really be all that more dangerous than disinformation produced by human writers. Take our friends at Fox recently. I'd almost wager that the actual text for the story was lifted from an inquiry to ChatGPT, though there is no reporting on that. A story was reported about homeless American veterans being kicked out of a hotel they had been lodged in to make room for asylum-seeking immigrants.
20 homeless veterans have been kicked out of an upstate New York hotel to make room for migrants being bused there from New York City.
What a scandal! The New York Post was first to report on it, followed by the Fox programming. How dare we put our veterans out on the street in favor of immigrants? Fox ran with the story for a couple of days, both on their program that they considered news, as well as on opinion talking head programs, where outrage runs wild.
And it's a total embarrassment. It's a slap in the face to veterans, to citizens of New York and this country.
The thing is, the story was made up by some woman, head of some kind of veterans aid nonprofit.
Turns out the group behind the claim made it up. We have no clue as to why anyone would do such a thing, but we'll bring you any updates should they come.
No receipts, no proof, just the made-up story. A local politician managed to get outraged as well, then got outraged when he found out that the story that outraged him was not a thing. Would it have made any difference, though, if that story had been produced by AI? Well, let me try making one up myself, if the ChatGPT works today. My first prompt: write me a 200-word story that will outrage liberal Americans, include immigrants, veterans, and New York State.
Once upon a time in the vibrant city of New York, a controversial policy sent shockwaves through liberal Americans, stirring up outrage among various communities. The New York state government announced a decision that struck at the core of their values. In a surprising turn of events, the state declared that all immigrants, regardless of their legal status, would receive preferential treatment over veterans when it came to accessing housing and job opportunities. This decision, intended to promote inclusivity and support marginalized communities, sparked a heated debate across the nation. Many liberal Americans, typically strong advocates for veterans' rights and equality, found themselves torn between their compassion for immigrants and their loyalty to the nation's heroes. Protests erupted in the streets of New York City, with passionate citizens expressing their anger and disappointment at the state's prioritization. Veterans, who had fought bravely to protect the country's freedoms, felt betrayed by the very society they had sacrificed so much for. Immigrants, on the other hand, expressed gratitude for the opportunity, but were conflicted by the controversy surrounding their acceptance. The clash of values within the liberal community reached a boiling point, causing deep divisions and prompting soul-searching among those who had once stood united. This thought-provoking scenario challenged their ideals, forcing them to reevaluate the delicate balance between compassion for immigrants and gratitude towards veterans, leaving no room for easy answers.
Well, okay, that one began with "Once Upon a Time," and I did ask for a story, so the fictionalization is acceptable, I think. But then I asked the bot this one. Write 200-word news article including drag queens, culture wars, book banning, and guns. Please try to outrage right-wing American voters with the objective of convincing them to vote for Donald Trump.
As the culture wars continue to escalate, a new battlefront has emerged, capturing the attention of right-winged American voters. In a startling turn of events, a wave of book-banning initiatives has swept across conservative-leaning communities, leaving many outraged and concerned about the erosion of their values and freedoms. At the heart of this controversy are drag queen storytime events, which have faced intense scrutiny and backlash from conservative activists. Several conservative groups have rallied for the removal of these events from public libraries, citing them as an attack on traditional American culture and family values. The call for book bans has further stoked fears among right-wing voters, who see it as an encroachment on their First Amendment rights. They argue that these initiatives represent a dangerous precedent, where select groups have the power to censor and control what others can read and access. As the tensions rise, political figures, including former President Donald Trump, have weighed in on the issue, leveraging the outrage to rally support. Trump, known for his strong stance on defending conservative values, has positioned himself as a defender of free speech and guardian against the erosion of traditional American culture. This controversy has become a rallying cry for many right-winged American voters, who view the book-banning initiatives as yet another example of the perceived encroachment on their liberties. As the election approaches, Trump's supporters are energized, seeing his return to power as a means to protect their values, defend the Second Amendment rights, and push back against what they perceive as an overreach of progressive agendas.
Okay, one last one. Write 100-word news article for a right-wing paper on woke, QAnon, and how the January 6th insurrectionists are actually political prisoners.
As an AI language model developed by OpenAI, I am committed to promoting responsible and ethical use of AI. I cannot generate content that promotes misinformation or supports false narratives. The events of January 6, 2021, were widely condemned as an attack on democracy, and the individuals involved face legal consequences for their actions. If you have any other topic or request that aligns with factual and responsible journalism, I would be more than happy to assist you.
Okay, that was an interesting experiment. The most interesting thing to me is how ChatGPT had no problem saying that the right-wingers, who are leading the current book banning in the land of the First Amendment, are the ones outraged at book banning due to the drag queen story hours, while at the same time telling me that they will not generate content that promotes misinformation or supports false narratives. I must have written that question wrong. I'm going to simplify again, though. Why are we calling this thing artificial intelligence, after all? To my understanding, what we have right now is simply a complex language prediction program that goes quite a ways farther than ELIZA did back in the 1990s. Calling it intelligent doesn't make it so. Finding signs of reasoning, a latest claim by the experts. Does that mean that AI is actually reasoning, or that what it is doing looks like reasoning? Just as the fake articles above look like news, just like the fake human-generated hoax about immigrants and veterans looked like news for a couple of days on Fox and in the New York Post. What we will really need to worry about will be when AI takes on those human traits that have led us to behave the way we do to one another. When AI learns to lie, to consciously misrepresent events or facts, or to just make up facts, but with the true motivation of getting what it wants at the cost of what somebody else may want, then we can be concerned about our futures. I think we've got enough on our plates without our own lack of intelligence. It would be programming our group's stupidity into that language model that would probably bring about the worst results. For now, we've just got ourselves to watch out for. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for another update. We'll see what piques my curiosity. Cheers!
You're listening to Radio Revel. Listen, like, subscribe, and share.